Billionaire mining magnate Clive Palmer is considering entering the referendum campaign for the no case. And I wonder whether that will be a help or a hinder for the side arguing no, including the federal opposition. Because quite often, someone like Clive Palmer might spend a few million trying to win a seat in an election and gets nothing. So will he be an effective campaigner for that side of the debate? I'm not so sure. To help us navigate through the referendum maze and all the other big issues making headlines right now, I'm joined by Australian Senator, New South Wales Liberal, Hollie Hughes. Hollie, g'day there. How did your Easter go?
Happy Easter, Smithy. It was just lovely. It really was. We got away for a few days down the coast and the weather was stunning. They may have been the last beach days for the year, but it was lovely.
Isn't that good? Was the crunchy chocolate eggs the winner in your household? Because they were in ours. Everyone went around trying to poach the crunchy version of the Easter eggs.
No, I opted. We've got a local store near where I live that does its own chocolate. So I went there and bought a couple of very big bunnies. So
beautiful.
I've noticed that two of the kids have demolished theirs and one's still sitting on it. So we'll see how we go.
Yes, mine were
out
of control. Mine are
getting a bit older now, though. Mine are a bit older. Yours are still in that, let's devour it all in 2 minutes phase. Mine are a little bit more sensible. Not much, but a little.
Yes, exactly. All right. So big Clive Palmer, billionaire mining magnate, to people listening from other parts of the world who don't know this fellow, is also against an Indigenous voice to Parliament. Is that a good thing or not?
Look, I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think Clive's actually raised some interesting points when he said that he's going to get involved with the no campaign. What I think will send the shivers up the yes campaigners is everything has been skewed by the government to deliver as many incentives to yes campaigns. We learn that Prime Minister Albanese wants to basically employ Indigenous sports stars to advocate the yes position. And I think the injection of funds that Mr Palmer is likely to bring with him will probably make those of the yes campaign a little bit nervous. And whilst, Victoria is probably the strongest yes vote, you've got to remember last election, the one seat that the Palmer Party picked up was a Senate seat in Victoria. So there is certainly a following there. It may soften the vote in Victoria. And of course, we know with a referenda, you need the majority of people in the majority of states. So Victoria and New South Wales are certainly the strongest states. So it'll be interesting to see whether he injects money into this campaign and whether or not it shifts the dial.
The last poll that I saw in the Australian last week indicated that the majority of people in the majority of states is capable of voting yes. That poll indicated that it was certainly heading in that direction. But that was before the opposition decided to argue for the no case, right?
Yeah, and it was also it's also reflective of the vote that is continuing to soften. So whilst at the moment it's still saying, a majority in a majority of states, I think it's a very soft vote. And I think one of the reasons it's particularly soft is the rhetoric being used by those in the left media in particular and the left side of politics is basically, if you aren't prepared to vote yes, you're a racist or a bigot, a wrecker, and even, anti-Semitic language like a Judas was used by Noel Pearson last week. And so I think a lot of people, when they would be doing these sort of surveys, may not be saying they're true, what they're going to do in the privacy of a ballot box.
Yeah, that's interesting because we've seen inaccuracies in polls based on what's trendy to say yes to and what's trendy to say no to in terms of candidates. And maybe the same thing relates to surveys pre-referendum in that it makes, politically correct sense to say, oh, yeah, I'll vote yes because you want to be encompassing of the Indigenous culture, et cetera, et cetera. But when, you start to add up what this really means, you realise that this is a step too far.
Well, and there is very little detail about how this will actually work.
Exactly.
And it's very different from the Karma Langton original proposal. It's very much a top-down approach that's being put forward by the Albanese government. And I think that's where Australians, when they start to have a look at it, are realising, whilst they can't afford to pay their mortgage or put groceries on the table or are struggling with everyday cost of living, you've got a government here that's proposing a huge amount of money on a referendum, but then a huge amount of money that's going to be spent on setting up basically new bureaucracies in every single department and across every single statutory body. The cost is going to be absolutely eye-watering. But of course, we're not getting any of those figures, because I think if the Yes campaign was honest with the Australian people and said, this is how much this is going to cost, you'd see a lot of people moving their vote.
You've lost a few team members in recent days because of the party stance on The Voice. Ken Wyatt, Julian Lesser, maybe more. It's not such a united front.
Oh, look, I don't think that's the case at all. Ken Wyatt, he had courage of this when he was in the parliament. He lost his seat at the last election. And this was never a proposal that he put forward to the party room or anywhere previously. And of course, he's no longer a member of parliament.
But that only makes his departure more of a shock, doesn't it?
Well, he was there. He was Indigenous Affairs Minister. He had courage for this. And we certainly never saw this being brought to the party room. So, there's probably a little bit of self-reflection required there and what his role was without pushing this forward. Well, Julian has been involved in this process for over a decade, but the appalling personal attacks that he was subjected to as being a member of the Liberal government, the Liberal opposition that said that we'll be supporting a no position, we do, as a party, believe that particularly those members on the backbench have the right to exercise a free vote. When you are a member of a cabinet or shadow cabinet, you are bound by the party room decision. And Julian's made the decision that he would prefer to be able to campaign for the yes vote. There is really only going to be one vote in Parliament, though, and that will be whether or not the referenda goes ahead. And so at the end of the day, that's the only vote that's going to be impacting prior to the referendum where anyone sits on this issue.
That's a very good point.
But you will have a lot of people voting no.
Yeah, that is often not discussed about whether that vote before the vote might be successful or not. I want to take a quick break. I've got Hollie Hughes, Australian Senator, New South Wales Liberal, on with us right now. We're going to talk about the G20 meeting in Washington, the NATO summit in Lithuania, Emmanuel Macron in Beijing, and Joe Biden on the Easter egg roll. All after this. Let's take a little bit of a break. If you missed your favourite TNT radio show or interview, you simply listen back when you want, wherever you want. Just visit episodes on the TNT Radio website. We're also on the major podcast platforms, including Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, Podbean, iHeart, TuneIn, and several more. I'll get another list on that because we're on some other platforms at the moment. There is no reason to miss out on anything on TNT Radio.
TNT Radio's Katie Hopkins.
We are being perpetually made smaller, that the world is closing down, and we are being taught that we must never try and leave our country. And of course, eventually that will be that we will never try and leave our 15-minute zone. So this story is chaos at Dover, where we get our ferries from when we try and escape to various places like France or Spain. Essentially, there's just enormous backlogs, and by enormous, I mean in excess of 2 days. Easter getaway woes continue for third day after, and they always come up with some bizarre reason. Here we go. Poor weather, long processing times, and then surprising number of vehicles. When does Easter fall? Every year. When does it fall roughly? At the same time. What do we know about Easter holidays? People try and go on holiday. How is it a surprise that there are a lot of people? And if all of these coach companies have booked, which they surely have, and they are ticketed, which they surely are, how is it a surprise when those people that you know are coming turn up?
Katie Hopkins on TNT Radio. A better business tip from TNT Radio. News Talk Radio listeners are some of the most active and involved listeners of any format. TNT Radio listeners rely on TNT Radio often as their primary source of information. They trust TNT Radio and are highly engaged with the content. If you'd like more information about advertising on TNT Radio, simply fill out your details on our contact page and we'll be in touch. To find out more, go to tntradio.live. This is The Chris Smith Show on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
It sure is good to have your company. If you want to be part of the conversation, especially on an Australian basis, call from Australia or New Zealand, 1-800-670-310. The UK, the number's 033-0024-1026, or the US and Canada, 1-888-201-6425. I've got Australian Senator, New South Wales Liberal Hollie Hughes with me right now. The Australian Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, is travelling to Washington tomorrow for meetings with his G20 counterparts. Hollie, I can just imagine the negative vibes in that room as they all measure their data, see who's got the biggest inflation rate and smallest growth rate. Should we expect a harsh May budget as a result?
Look, I think it'll be interesting to hear what Minister Chalmers says when he's asked about the investment situation in Australia. The last week of Parliament, the safeguard mechanism was passed by the Senate. And, you know, that is at risk of targeting investment into our country for decades because we are no longer a secure place to invest, particularly for mining, energy and any of those heavy industries that have difficult emissions to abate. So we've certainly opened up our own economy to more significant problems than any other through the actions of this government. But we are seeing still high inflation across the world, governments that are addicted to spending more. We do need to see a tightening of spending and make sure that this budget does reflect that. I think what's important to remember, though, and if you listen to the current government, you wouldn't know that they had a budget in October last year. They, continually harp on to the previous coalition government's our last budget with no recognition of the budget that they themselves put down in October. And every now and then we keep hearing about, this was a problem and this is a problem. But at the same time, we had Jim Chalmers and Katie Gallagher telling us they were going through the budget line by line. Well, clearly in their budget in October, they missed a few and weren't quite on top of their brief. So I hope rather than penning essays, Minister Chalmers has got on top of his brief and is able to have conversations about what is really happening and what is happening on the global scene. Because if not, it'll be every Australian taxpayer that pays for it.
All right. I noticed that NATO has invited Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to the NATO summit in Lithuania. I'm not sure Albo can change the course of this war, but surely NATO needs to stop flexing muscles, Hollie, and start promoting a peace deal.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure, what he can actually achieve either, but Australia's obviously been a reasonably significant contributor to the war in Ukraine, particularly through our disbursement of bushmasters, etc., to the Ukrainians. But look, it would be good to see a move towards the peace process. Unfortunately, Russia still seems to be quite obstinate. So there's obviously a lot of complexity there. The recent leak of strategic documents that appear to have come out of the Pentagon is obviously going to make it, more challenging.
I think Zelensky is showing more obstinance than Putin. I get the feeling that Zelensky is showing a hell of a lot more obstinance. But anyway, either way, there's too much obstinance and the world wants peace.
They won't cede territory, and that Russia's saying it won't leave without territory, being handed over to Russia. So, I don't know how we're going to get to a position where we see back to what Ukraine looked like before the invasion by Russia.
Yeah, but back in 2014, when Crimea was taken, the world did nothing. Maybe that's the point of negotiation, not afterwards. Anyway, what are your thoughts about Emmanuel Macron, the French president, meeting Xi Jinping in Beijing? They look very cosy. Macron even said that Europe must resist pressure to become America's followers. 2 hours ago, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said it was indecent, given what the US has done for France. Macron is a little bit two-faced on this issue, isn't he?
Look, I think it's extraordinary when you consider the Chinese Belt and Roads Initiative, which we know they're using to infiltrate a lot of nations, but particularly those in the South Pacific. And that's not only very close to Australia's doorstep, but, there is a lot of French territory there. And the increasing presence of China and their influence in that region is of concern to everyone, not only for the power base that they could secure, but its importance in international trade routes and what they might be able to do there. Taiwan is something we should all be concerned about. It is, a democratic nation that is constantly under threat. They've just had live weapons testing at the closest point they could from China, mainland China, over to Taiwan. These are big issues that the world's facing. And I think trying to hedge your bets is probably not the way you want to go. And, we just talked about NATO. That's like putting together a bit of a bloc by including countries like Australia and New Zealand against, if you like, the new, to steal a term from George W., the axis of evil, but you've got China, North Korea, Iran and Russia there. And the world really will need to potentially stand strong against those four powers should anything escalate, which obviously we hope it doesn't. But you can't hedge your bets on these issues.
No, very true. You can't hedge your bets, especially in light of your history of alliance with the United States. Now, finally, to the United States, and while at the annual Easter egg roll, Sleepy Joe hinted at running for president again. I couldn't believe this. Have a listen to this snippet.
So this is a fantastic event, one of my favorite of the year. I was just wondering, Mr. President, will you be taking part in the Easter egg rolls after 2024?
Well, I plan on at least 3 or 4 more Easter egg rolls.
At least 3 or 4 more?
Maybe 5.
Maybe 5?
maybe 6. What the hell?
Are you saying that you would be taking part in our upcoming election in 2024?
Well, I'll either be rolling an egg or being the guy who's pushing them out.
Come on, help a brother out. Make some news for me.
I plan on running out, but we're not prepared to announce it yet.
All right. Well,
surely voters, Hollie, couldn't put the world through another term under Biden. But I get the feeling that he might be on his own ticket and the Democrats might be on a different ticket entirely. But nonetheless, please don't give us another 4 years of Joe Biden.
It's almost getting to elder abuse, isn't it?
Oh, too right.
I mean, you'd think his wife at some point would step in and say, you've made it to president, enough's enough. To think that he would be 86 should he be successful in getting another term at the end of the next term of the presidency is extraordinary. I find it unbelievable that a country the size of America, the two front runners are Donald Trump and Joe Biden. I mean, is that really what they think the world needs at the moment? And I'm not quite sure either one of those are the answer.
Yeah, that's an interesting. It's an interesting comment you make. Surely there are other very qualified leaders that could do the job that Joe Biden is incapable of doing.
Look, he's apparently coming to Australia not too far away, and it was interesting because I heard a colleague say, I'm really keen to hear him speak in the Australian Parliament to get a sense whether or not the dithering that we hear so often on the media playbacks of things is sort of a continual thing, or whether or not there is some
it's real
gravitas or something. I mean, look, that's my feeling.
There's not a day goes by without someone making fun of what he's just said or what he's just done.
No. I mean, you've got to have a hide of Teflon, don't you, to sort of keep going when this sort of coverage and these sort of, I mean, they're embarrassing, the hiccups that are happening. They're not, they're not small, they're not insignificant, and they'd be deeply embarrassing, I think, to anyone with any sort of sense of self-awareness. But that seems to be lacking here in completion.
Now, when are you back in Parliament to continue your joust with Lydia Thorpe?
Oh, don't. Giving her a break. We are not back to Parliament till budget week. So that would be the second week of May.
She might have changed by then. She might be a different person. Well,
she still hasn't withdrawn her comments. So the saga is not over because she will need to come and withdraw her claims against me under instruction by the president, or there could be further action taken against her. So we will, Lydia's yet to really withdraw anything she's done or said. So it'll be interesting to see where it lands.
Ding, ding, round 6, bring it on. We'll be watching. Love it.
Just
Thank
'cause
you,
you
Hollie
enjoy
Hughes.
it.
You're fabulous as usual.
All right. Have a great day, Chris.
Good on you. Thank you, Hollie. Liberal New South Wales Senator Hollie Hughes, who says it from the heart, says it a little bit more than what most politicians might venture to say, but that's why we've got her on the program. It's good to have Hollie Hughes with us on TNT Radio.